Good morning. And this is a little special teaser before
Yeah,
we have an amazing guest on.
such a good guess. I cannot wait for this
I
guest in
can't
3
wait
minutes.
for people to hear it, and I can't wait for people to just hear our silence. And our silence is us trying to process
Process.
all of the goodness that Mel Goodman, who you're about to hear, drops on us. And I
Mhm.
think we're going to do an entire episode debrief of the work that she we had some homework that we really need to go through.
Okay, that's actually brilliant. We need to have, like, our follow-up because literally, if you listen to that episode in 5 seconds, you'll hear silence because 'cause we're just like, "Wait, we're doing a podcast. I thought you were talking
Yeah.
to me." Like, wait.
Right, talking to us directly, she's gonna
Yeah,
feel like she's talking to you
yeah.
directly. She's gonna
It's
feel like
perfect.
she's opened your soul and
Oh,
said evaluated all of the things that go on down in there, of
so
all of the mom doubt or the dad doubt or the questions that you have about how do you balance
anything.
anything.
Um, and so before we do it, the whole reason why we're popping on is Lucy's going to talk about something really quickly, but the segue should be share it with your best friend right now.
Sure, yes, this episode, almost more than any other
Any,
episode, I would
whoever you
say,
love out of love for Valentine's Day, which is
out
why
of
we're on here
love,
early.
Valentine's, Galentine's, whatever we're saying, it's Valentine's week right now. And
Share
we're
it.
really share this episode with a friend. We're really, really excited about all of the amazing
Hmm.
insights
Hmm.
that have come out of it. But in addition to that, because Sam and I are just having so much fun with this podcast, and
Hmm.
it's so fun to do something like this with your best friend, we want to give all of you a little something. So
Hey,
we have put together a giveaway of some of our favorite things, some face stuff, some running stuff, some
lip gloss.
lip gloss, some immunity, like just
Ugh,
a lot of really great things that we just love and want you and a friend
and
to
your
share.
bestie. It's a double giveaway.
So if you pop on to our Instagram this week, USWWD pod on Instagram, and we'll link it in the show notes as well. Starting on the 11th, we're going to have a little giveaway. So take a look. The rules will be pretty clear. Follow us on Instagram, tag a friend, and subscribe to the pod on Spotify or Apple Podcasts.
Or
And you,
YouTube. We would love
or
we would
YouTube.
love for you to
Yeah.
subscribe app Spotify, but also go look at us on YouTube. We would love your
Yeah.
subscription on YouTube.
Yeah. So it should be an easy thing, but we want you and a friend to get a little bag of We'll Sleep When We're Dead goodies from us.
Mhm.
And we hope you have a wonderful Valentine's this week. Thanks for listening.
Yay! Thanks.
All right. Hello. Welcome to We'll Sleep When We're Dead. Thank you so
Thank you
much
so
for
much for having
coming.
me. Of
Yay, we're so
course. Thank you so
excited.
much for having me.
We
We are so
have
happy
a
you're here.
new friend of the pod on today, Mel Goodman. Mel, I'm going to let you describe your career journey because it's so cool. But I
Hmm.
would say the reason that you're here and the reason that we sought you out and we're so excited that you're here is that you're currently the founder of WorkMom. And I know we're going to get into that and ask you all the questions about it. But I think as Sam and I have been looking into it and looking into all the services that it provides and how you like your content on LinkedIn is like one of my favorite things to follow because it
Hmm.
so deeply resonates with me as a working mom. I think it deeply resonates with a lot of our audience who continue to ask a lot of the questions that you pose in your LinkedIn. And I'm sure that you talk to your clients about. Anyways,
Yeah.
well, let's just kick it off and kind of if you could walk us through your career journey, your mom journey, however you want to shape that, that would be amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm so grateful that you shared that about LinkedIn because I think what so many women are needing right now is to feel seen, to feel like
Mhm.
they're not alone in all the dynamics that we're experiencing, both on a macro and micro level.
Yeah.
So thank you for saying that. But
Yeah.
yeah, just a little bit about my journey to where I am now. So I have always had an entrepreneurial itch. I came from a family of entrepreneurs myself, and so building was kind of like always in my DNA. But for the first 15 years of my career, I chose more of a traditional path. I
Yeah.
was climbing the corporate ladder at tech companies like Salesforce and Square, getting into leadership fairly young and really falling in love with coaching and mentoring and building teams. And I found a lot of meaning in that work. And I loved creating a vision and building culture from scratch and executing over time, and watching something like really take shape was really meaningful for me. And so for most of my adult life, I identified mostly with my career. And
Yeah.
I honestly had not thought much about having kids at all. And I was honestly terrified of the idea. Like literally when they told me I was at 10 centimeters with our first daughter, I was like, can I please take a nap? I'm not ready.
Quick pause, and then we can come back to this. Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's crazy.
Quick pause, please. I'm not ready.
Oh my
And I
gosh.
had never changed a diaper in my life, like really hadn't spent time with kids. And when our first baby came out, it was like my world just drastically changed. And what
Mhm.
surprised me most is that, when I became a mom, it felt incredibly natural. That was shocking to me. And it became the role that I felt and still feel the most grounded and confident in, like almost
Yeah.
immediately. And at the same time, I still wanted my career. And I really believed that I could do both, be a present mom
Mhm.
and continue to grow professionally. And transparently, I kind of got defensive when somebody would tell me that it's like not possible or not
Yeah.
easy, which now
Yeah.
looking back, I'm like, yeah, you were right. It's not easy. It
Mhm.
is possible.
Mhm. Yep.
But then a series of things happened that really forced me to slow down and reckon with some big questions, fertility challenges, a miscarriage, postpartum anxiety. And then the big inflection point that I had in my career, I've had a few since becoming a mom, but like the biggest one really was I was at a luxury travel company building a sales development team from the ground up while raising our first daughter at the time. And she was just a baby and a toddler at the time. Years into that work, I had to dissolve the team within 24 hours because of COVID.
Oh my
And
gosh.
I remember sacrificing a lot of time away from my daughter
Yeah.
at the time, nights and weekends. And I just remember being left with this like very heavy feeling that started to ask the question of what was it all for?
Mm.
And that moment really was a big inflection point for me. And I realized that I wasn't necessarily like burnt out, because I think we can misconstrue burnout with other feelings and emotions. I was really lost and I felt really
Mm.
off. And that is what a lot of women feel right now. They feel lost. They feel quote unquote off, and they can't describe it in any other way. And I was trying to make sense of what success meant to me in that season, how I wanted to look at ambition, and how I wanted to bring meaning in my career in a
Yeah.
season where really the old definitions of success and ambition and meaning didn't really fit any longer. And so once I named that feeling in myself, I started to see it everywhere, right? Like incredibly capable women questioning their ambition, their choices, their place at work. And
Mhm.
that bothered me so much because I see these women excelling and doing such great work, and I see myself in them. And I don't want them to feel like it's them, because it's really the system that we're operating within.
Yeah.
And they also just don't have the language or the support for navigating the change that comes with motherhood, just inevitable change that happens. And so the work that I do now really is because I can't stand watching women make career decisions while feeling lost. And so I help them feel more grounded and confident in the moments that actually shape their careers, so that they're choosing more from clarity instead of the pressure that we
Yeah.
are feeling and hearing from everywhere around us.
Whoa.
Wow.
I am like, it's always really interesting to hear people put language to feelings, thoughts, emotions that you may have heard in yourself before, i.e., me, or in others. And I think it's been interesting. Sam and I have been talking about it a lot recently. Just like, is it our age? Is it our life stage? Is it the fact that we have kids? Because it does feel like half the reason we started this podcast was for this exact reason. Like many women in our seat are feeling these similar emotions, and we don't have a lot of words to put to them. So I'm so
Or
curious,
we
like,
want, or we compare, well, if it would just be easier if I had a job and I wasn't with my kids all day. Or maybe on Lucy's side, it would just be easier if I didn't have to deal with work all day. But I feel like that is just an example of us, again, not having the language to like really name the problem. We just kind of want to like pin it onto something else, which is not the
Mhm.
issue. So that's why we created the podcast so we could be open and talk about it. So it is, yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm curious, Mel, like when you mentioned success and like your definition of success, like
Yeah.
what, whether it's with you or people that you chat with, like how does that definition continue to evolve for people, for women? Is it, what did it look like before versus like what can it look like after?
This is, I think, the most important question. And the thing that is hardest for us, high achieving women, to even think about this question is that we don't give ourselves permission to think about success differently as seasons and life stages
Mhm.
evolve and our perspective evolves, right? Like going
Yeah.
back to, and I'll share, a little bit about like how my definition of success has evolved over time. But I want to go back to something that you said earlier about like, is it life stage? Is it age? Is it the season that I'm in as a mom? I think it's all of the above. And I think,
Mhm.
a lot of it is as you get older, you have a different perspective on life. You have a bigger
Mhm.
picture perspective on life. You start to realize what really, really matters to you. And that is a big reason why things start to feel off in your
Mhm.
career. And you want it to feel worth it. Like the number of times that I have heard a high achieving mom say to me, if I'm going to be away from my kids, I want it to feel worth it. I want it to be meaningful. That is what everyone feels, particularly right now. And so my definition of success has evolved drastically since I became a mom. Before kids, success felt really straightforward for me. It was about growth, it was about momentum, visibility, doing more, 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 taking on more, 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 providing or proving I could handle it all. Right. And to be honest, like that version of success worked for me for a long time. I was good at it. I knew how to win in that system, just like so
Yeah.
many of us high achieving women know how to do. And then after becoming a mom, it wasn't like my definition of success suddenly shifted for me. It initially came in the form of feeling pretty lost, as I mentioned
Mhm.
earlier, like something was quote unquote off and I couldn't like
Yeah.
pinpoint it. And I knew definitively that success didn't suddenly stop mattering to me, right? It still was really important to me, but the cost of it became impossible to ignore.
Mhm.
And late nights, constant availability, always being on, those things just they didn't just affect me anymore. They affected my family, my energy, my presence, my ability to take care of myself as well, which enables me to be a better human, a better mom, a better friend, all of the above. And then when I had to
Yeah.
dissolve the team that I mentioned earlier, I started to really redefine success in the specific season I was in. So there was a catalyst that made
Yeah.
me really start rethinking. But I was still charging ahead for a while. For those first few years of motherhood, I was trying to prove that I
Yeah.
could still do it. I didn't want anyone to think that I wasn't as committed. And the reality is as women, we kind of have to think that way. We don't have a lot of room for error in corporate America. And so anytime our commitment is questioned, that turns into self-doubt for us, right? And
Mhm.
so for me, what changed wasn't necessarily my drive. It was more my tolerance for success that required me to be disconnected from my life. And so success evolved from how much can I do and how fast can I grow to is this a way of working actually livable for this season of my life?
Yeah.
And that question, figuring out what success looks like now, not what it looked like before, is where so many working moms get stuck. And I think a
Yeah.
lot of that is because they don't give themselves the permission to think differently about it. So that's how, and then, for what happened for me is like I went to Salesforce after I dissolved that team and I actually took some time. I was still employed at that travel company and I took some time to really get my head straight, to really get clear, which I think is something that a lot of women don't have the luxury of doing. I asked for a leave of absence and that really turned a corner for me. I took a two
Yeah.
month leave and really got still and got clear and because I felt so lost.
Yeah.
And I decided to go back to Salesforce where I started my career. I knew the company well. I knew how much they valued family life And so that was really important to me. So I was
Yeah.
very clear about what I was looking for in that next stage of my career. And I knew definitively that I did not want to build a team from scratch anymore. I
Yep.
wanted to inherit a team, and I was very clear about what I wanted out of that role. I was working with a career coach at the time to really help me get clear on that and feel confident in what
Yeah.
I wanted to get out of that role and feel like that's enough for this season right now. And so what that looked like for me, just to kind of bring it to life, was my definition of success at that time was to master certain leadership skills that I could one day use to start a business and to learn from really talented colleagues and build more of my network up, as opposed to climbing the ladder, taking on extra
Mhm.
projects that I'm always used to doing. And of course,
Yeah.
I always, I still wanted to be a great leader. And that was part of my definition of success. I still had high expectations for myself as a leader because that's what my team deserves. But
Right.
leadership and building culture was easy for me. The hard part was preventing myself from taking more on when that's what I was always so used to doing.
Yeah.
And so I think that changing your definition of success takes work. And for
Mhm.
me, it took constant reminders from not myself, because it's not always easy to remind yourself, right? You can very easily go back to your old conditioning. It took constant reminders from my husband. He kept saying, it's okay to be good and not great always. And also
Mhm.
remember that your good is probably a lot of other people's great. And so I had to really give myself grace in the season that I was in and honor what matters most to me at that time. And now, as that has evolved, my definition of success still it keeps evolving over time. Now, as an entrepreneur, something that's really important to me in the way that I'm building my business is like, I'm not looking to build this like massive business with a ton of scale. I want to make a really big
Mhm.
impact on a lot of women as much as I possibly can, but I don't want that to cost me the ability to do as many field trips as I want to go on with
Yeah.
with my daughters, or be able to go read a book at my daughter's preschool, be a part of their day to day in the way that I want.
Yeah.
I think it's really important to allow for your definition of success to continue to evolve and give yourself permission and grace around that.
One thing that you mentioned that I feel like I would love to hear your perspective on is this constant availability is a really difficult piece, I think, for working women and working men, because I will say I struggle with it for sure. And I have my husband always over here reminding me that, like, I don't always need to be available. And I know Sam's experience with it on the other side of her husband always being available can just be really challenging. I'm curious, like, how you might coach women in this stage where that becomes a bigger burden than probably women realize. Like, if I ever step back and think about that, I realize that that's like can be a heavy thing. But I'm curious, like, how you think about setting guardrails or any advice that you feel like that you've been able to like help people achieve at least like a vision around how that might change and evolve.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, the first question that I would ask is, do you have any patterns or notice any patterns in when you feel like you can't say no?
Always. Like, I don't say no to much.
So in
And
that
Sam knows
case,
that. So, yeah.
yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. So the first thing we want to do is think big picture. We want to think about, okay,
Yeah.
what is the most important thing in your life
Yeah.
right now?
Yeah.
From 1, 2, and 3, like what are the core priorities in your life right now? And are all of the things that you are saying yes to aligned with those core 3 priorities? That's the first question that I would want you to
A
think
great
about.
question. Yeah. I'm
How
gonna
would
write
you
these
answer
down
that?
and then I'm gonna go back and do a workbook later of all of the things we're learning. Mel, I love it.
I love it. I love it. So, what comes up for me as you're sharing that is it's not necessarily that you need to create boundaries at work per se.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily that you need to create boundaries for other people to operate in your own world. It's really that you need boundaries within yourself,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so the first step to that is getting clear on what matters most to you in this specific season, knowing
Yep.
that your life evolves and that seasons evolve. Some seasons are for growth, some seasons are for rest. Defining what that
Mhm.
season is that you're in right now, and then aligning your priorities to that, and then aligning all of the decisions that you
Yeah.
say yes and no to those priorities is how you can start to affect change when it comes to boundaries with yourself.
I would say Sam and I are definitely in the year of the fire horse right now. It doesn't actually start till February 17th, just as an aside, Sam, which I found, but we're solely in it.
That's okay.
So I
We're in
think
it.
we've had a lot of energy, just like the two of us, like we're just feeling it. And so I think like it's a chapter of growth right now is what it feels like. Even like us doing this podcast has been like a total leap into the unknown. We have no idea where it's going to go. We have no idea what how long we'll do it, but we're loving it and we're investing like time and energy into it right now. And so I think that's an interesting way of framing it is like, what do I even need out of this season right now to feel like energized? So I think that would help like frame and guide some of my thinking too.
I'm also just like obviously listening because I come from a very different experience, but like on the availability side as a stay-at-home mom, it can be incredibly daunting to feel like you're the only one that's always available, right? Like I have a husband or if you have two working parents, you have to balance that availability and then you might never feel available. Like I can see how that, because I have a husband who's not available very often and it doesn't have boundaries with working and it's hard. But then that falls onto me of that dauntingness of just like, I don't want to have to always be available. Like it is a lot of work to feel like being the one that always has to do all of the load for the kids and be at everything and know every teacher's thing. And I know moms do most of that anyway, and you guys are working, so I can only imagine. But I think this is a good transition into like mom guilt, because I feel like something that I'm curious about you, because Lucy and I have very different experiences. And I really have been reflective on my mom guilt ever since we started this podcast, because the joke is that I don't have any. But I think it's truly because I have hit rock bottom a few times as a stay-at-home mom that I have learned if I do not set a little bit of boundaries for myself and not make myself available, I'm not well. Like it's not okay. And so then the only way that a stay-at-home mom can do that is by giving her time away from the kids. And then if I'm doing that with guilt, what's the point of being gone? Because then I'm just guilty. And so I think it's taken a lot of time, but I'm curious for you, like what the mom guilt in that world of who you're working with, and if you have tips for people who have that. Because I'm not a pro of like don't have any guilt, but I'm a pro of really being like, be intentional with when you're gone. And so when you are gone, make it worth your while and then come back and be like, I deserved that. And I know that can be slippery slope too. Like those, all the posts like, I deserve it. But like, I'm not doing that. I'm going away a few times a year, or I'm also saying, no, I'm not going to be at the field trip, because I don't have capacity for that right now. And I'm not going to let myself feel guilty. Just because I'm available doesn't mean I have to be there. And so I don't know, I'm learning how to do it, but it's also not easy. So I'm interested, I guess, about the mom guilt and what you're seeing and how people are handling that with also this load of feeling lost. Like it just feels like too much.
Gosh, you named so much of what we all experience, truly. I mean,
Yeah.
the availability piece that you talked about, that also relates to the 4 loads that I talk about: the mental, logistical, emotional, and identity load. And you're carrying all of those, which we can talk about in a little bit. But to hit on the mom guilt, well, first, I also just wanted to acknowledge the field trip thing, right? Like I talked about how, for example, I love going on those field trips because I am working, right? And so I don't have the opportunity to spend as much time as you might do with your kids. So in your case, I think that is a brilliant idea to not go on the field trip. You need that space and time for yourself. Like that will just exhaust you. I went on a field trip a couple weeks ago and I think I needed like a whole day to recover.
Yeah.
Running around with second graders at a museum all day. I think I got like 10,000 steps.
Oh my gosh.
And that's like where that guilt can come into play of like, only get like 5 hours a day max to myself. And that includes all the housework, all the grocery shopping, all the things. So then to then say, I'm going to go on the field trip at 10 a.m., I'm like, well, then that day didn't exist. And it just feels hard right now. There will be a season when I will feel very okay going on the field trip or volunteering. But right now with 3 littles, that is just something that I have said I don't have time for.
And that is exactly what I coach on, is like, what's the trade-off, right? And that's exactly what you're doing. It's an intentional trade-off.
Yeah.
So the way that I think about mom guilt, I actually think that mom guilt has become a catch-all phrase that kind of hides what's really going on. I think we
Mhm.
use mom guilt just interchangeable now for
Yeah.
so many different
Yeah,
things that we're feeling.
totally.
And it's just
Yeah.
become this phrase in our society. And I think we need to redefine it. We need to rethink about what really is guilt. And is it
Mhm.
actually guilt? Is it really what's showing up in our lives? Because guilt by definition is the feeling that you get when you believe that you've done something wrong. Like that is the definition of guilt. And what
Mhm.
quote unquote wrong means is entirely defined by your respective values, right?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so the problem is that modern motherhood activates multiple values all at the same time. Most working moms deeply value being present with their kids
Mhm.
and responsive to their kids and being emotionally available for their kids, particularly as like millennial parents, but also building meaningful, sustainable work. And
Yeah.
when both of those values matter, and also to back up for a second, what I also mean by work is not necessarily working outside of the house. It's what you're doing, Sam, too, right?
Yeah.
Like
Mhm.
all mothers are working in some
Mhm.
capacity.
Mhm.
And so when both of those values matter, there's no clear way to prioritize in a given moment, guilt shows up. You're constantly
Mhm.
just being pulled in all of these different roles, and especially as women, it's not just work and motherhood. It's being a friend, being a daughter, being a sister,
Mhm.
all the things, right?
Yeah.
And so guilt is usually not telling you that you're doing something wrong, you that you care deeply about more than one thing. And
Love
earlier in
that
motherhood,
definition.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good
yeah,
one.
it's really like you care deeply about more than one thing.
Yeah.
And if we all
Mhm.
saw it that way, we would see the beauty in that.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And so a lot of this goes back to like, okay, back to your values. What do you
Yeah.
value? Right? What
Yeah.
are your
Mhm.
priorities right now?
Mhm.
And if you were to look at guilt, with does it align with what matters most to you? And
Right.
so earlier in motherhood, I think that guilt often sounds like, is it okay to want this? Like when you're
Mhm.
early on in motherhood, that's kind of the question of like, should I want this? Is it okay to want this? But then later on, especially for women who are further along in their careers, they become a little bit more senior. The question I tend to see shifts to, is this guilt actually useful or is it just
Mm.
noise?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of what we call guilt is really pressure. We're told what a good mom should look like. And when real life doesn't match that picture, we internalize it as guilt.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
so there's a mismatch between reality and unrealistic expectations.
And
So
Mel,
for me,
do you
yeah,
get the impression that like guilt, when you say how it can be helpful, is it helpful in the context of like going back to those values? Like I'm feeling
yeah,
this way because I have a misalignment in some capacity with how I'm feeling, and like
yes.
that guilty feeling can help you identify that. Okay. Yeah.
But
That's
going back to,
super interesting.
Sam's, yeah, it's like, okay, when you're feeling guilty, go back to your values and see, okay, what's not in
Mhm.
alignment right now? There might be something
Yeah.
not in alignment right now, or it could also be that you're just putting a lot of pressure on yourself.
Yep.
Those two things are hard to distinguish too. So it takes
Yeah.
some clarity and it takes some stillness to figure out. But when I want to go back to what Sam shared around, and I wasn't clear if what you were sharing, because I know you said that you don't necessarily have a lot of guilt. And so, but you also said that you feel like you want to be available a lot, right? And so I'm curious if when you are not available or when you don't want to be available, does guilt show up in that instance for you?
When I have to be available and I don't want to be available, it comes into this like, this is where I've really learned I have maybe a little bit of guilt. I feel very resentful that this is my life, that I have been given this
Mm.
task of sole parent most of the time. And I also realize that it's a choice my husband and I are making, but you go into it not knowing how hard it's going to be. And then you're in it and you're like, oh, wow, traveling husband with 3 kids alone in New York City is much harder. I thought I could do this. And so my guilt comes in the fact that when I'm available, when I don't want to be available, I'm not very good at parenting. I'm really
Mhm.
short. I
Mhm.
don't feel like a good mom. And then I leave that situation feeling guilty because that is where I think guilt is true for me, where I felt like I did
Yeah.
something wrong. I wasn't a very patient mom. I snapped too much. But then I realized
Mhm.
when those moments happen for me, that's me being like, I've reached the end of my road. Like,
Mhm.
I need help. And so, yeah, it's like this circle of like, I can do it, I can do it, I can do it. And then I've become way too available for way too many people. I kind of
Mhm.
hit rock bottom. So that's, I think, where that guilt comes in. I don't have
Yeah.
the guilt of going away on a girls' trip. I don't have a guilt of getting a date night for a sitter. I don't have the guilt of telling my kids a lot of times, like, mommy's not available right now. She's in the kitchen cooking. You need to go away because I'm not available. That's
Mhm.
not where I see it. It's way
Mhm.
more of when I act not my best because I'm
Yeah.
always available. I've done bedtime for the 10th day in a row and I'm annoyed. Like, I'm just not happy, you know? So that's kind of where it
Yeah.
shows up for me.
Yeah. That makes total sense. I think that just shows your humanity. Anyone
Yeah.
in your shoes would feel the same way, right?
Yeah.
And so a couple of things come to mind as you're sharing what you're sharing, which is the first thing is when you feel like you have done something in a way that you didn't want to do as a parent, right? You can
Hmm.
always repair. Like, I think
Yeah.
repairing is truly the most important thing that we can do for our kids, to show you're human, to show that it's
Hmm.
okay to make a mistake, and to show that you can come back and apologize. And it
Hmm.
also gives them permission to apologize and admit that
Yeah.
they did something wrong, you know?
Yeah.
And not
Yeah.
necessarily that you did anything wrong, just more so
Yeah.
that you did something that didn't feel good to you.
Hmm.
You
Hmm.
want to make it right with them,
Yeah.
right? And I
Yeah.
think that's amazing, by the way. I think something that you said about when you're not available, you feel totally comfortable saying, I'm not available right now to play.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
I can relate to that so much. After I have given my kids 20 minutes of my undivided attention, I'm like, I'm not the mom that like can sit for hours and play, right? And
Mm-mm.
so like I don't get a lot of joy out of that. And I think
Mm-mm.
We
that's
found good
normal,
friends
number
here on
one.
the pod.
Yeah.
We're kind of
Yeah.
the same way.
Yeah.
Good,
It's not
good devoted spurts, and then we need a break.
Yep. We're good.
So
We're
yes.
good.
right.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
unnatural for us
No.
to be able to do figurines for hours, right? Like that's not the way our brain works anymore. And so I think it's totally legitimate and a good thing for our kids to
Hmm.
hear. No, I'm not
Hmm.
able to play with you right now. I'm going to work on this right now. Sometimes I even say it's not even when I have something that I need to do. It's like I want to go read my book. No,
Hmm.
mommy's going to
Yeah.
go read my book right now. I want to have some of my own time while you do some of your own time.
Hmm.
And I think that's important for our kids. I think it's important for them to learn how to be bored and use their imagination. And I can relate to you in that, like, for me, I don't necessarily feel a lot of guilt. I feel guilt doesn't necessarily show up around working or like being away from my kids, especially when it comes to work. I actually think that it's really important for my kids and our kids as a generation to see us working, to see what's
Yeah.
possible, and also to bring them into our work, to help them learn how to ask questions about our work and to be honest about what we're doing, what we're focused on,
Hmm.
and when we're in a really busy season so they know what to expect.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
so I think those are all really, really good things for our kids. So that's how
Yeah.
that's how I see guilt. I think what helps most isn't trying to get rid of guilt. It's more about, Lucy, what you were saying. It's really getting clear. When women have a
Hmm.
clear sense of what matters most in a given season, guilt tends to lose its grip.
Yeah, that's amazing. Mel,
Hmm.
I can already tell we're going to have you on for part 2 because we're going to
Yeah.
get through about half of our questions today.
Yeah.
So I'm like, this is so deep and rich, and
Hmm.
I think strikes at the heart of so many things that we've been talking about. So
Hmm.
just thank
Yeah.
you for being here and
Yeah.
answering all
Of
those.
course.
I think
Yeah.
one thing I want to make sure that we do touch on today, because I think it's been one of the things Sam and I have gone back and forth as I've been like screenshotting your LinkedIn and sending it to Sam, is like
Yeah.
the different types of overload. Because I think you have identified like mental, emotional, logistical, and identity. And I'm just curious, like, which one surprises women the most when you name those 4 territories? Like, when you dive in and you like truly name that there's like 4 different places that you typically see people red flag in some capacity, like, which of those is like the most prominent or the most surprising?
Yeah. Well, at a high level, first of all, I love this question. And this research that I did was really eye opening for me in the way that it is for so many moms, because at a high level, I think the most surprising thing for moms is that there's more than one load. A lot of people
Yeah.
just wrap up all of the loads under the mental load, right?
Mhm.
Mental load has become such again, similar to mom guilt. It's like
Yeah.
this phrase that we just constantly use interchangeably for so many different things. And the reality
Yeah.
is there are 4 different types of loads in modern motherhood, right? There's the mental load, which is everything that we're thinking about. It's the logistical load, which is all of the doing of the mental load, the identity load, which is like who you were versus who you are now. And then
Mhm.
there's the emotional load, which is like all of the worry that we experience as parents. And for me, that shows up a lot in how fast time goes, right? Going back to what we were
Mhm.
talking about earlier on in the conversation, or just around like,
Mhm.
oh, I'm so sad that my kids are growing up
Mhm.
type of thing. But then there's also like the
Yeah.
worry of what's happening on a macro level. And that
Yeah.
relates to, motherhood in many ways as well, right? So there's all these different loads that are constantly ruminating in our brains. And the one without question that surprises women the most is the identity overload. And I think, and I'm sure you can see this, that the mental and logistical overload makes sense right away. The lists, the
Yeah.
schedules, the constant planning, like it's very clear what that is.
Yeah.
The emotional overload usually clicks pretty quickly as well, but identity overload is the one that really like stops people in their tracks, because it's the pressure of trying to be the same person that you were before motherhood and going 120% in every single role, while also becoming somebody completely new without
Mhm.
any clear permission to evolve.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
originally, I thought I was solving for overload in like a very practical way, just helping women manage the load better. But what I started noticing is that even when the systems improved, many women still felt lost. And that's when it clicked for me that the hardest part wasn't the volume of responsibility,
Mhm.
even though that is a really big part of our capacity obstacles that we're facing. But it was more so it was making decisions while while we're unsure of who we are allowed to be now. Like,
Mhm.
you're making decisions about your career, about your life, big and small decisions based on who you were before, not who you are now. And so this is a big reason why we tend to feel lost and quote unquote off, right? And we keep making these decisions. And then you end up in another company that you're like, ooh, that wasn't the right fit. Now I need to look around again. Right.
Yeah.
So it continues to happen. And so many women, they blame themselves around when something is technically off or wrong, right? But it's usually the identity overload. And we're carrying so many expectations from this old version of success that just doesn't fit us anymore. We have different priorities now. And nobody really tells you how disorienting that can feel.
Mhm.
So when you're in that space, what you can do to kind of help the load is what happens is most women try to push through it, and they push through it until the decisions start feeling heavier than they should. And in practice, pushing through looks like doubling down on competence, proving yourself again over and over and over. We work harder, we stay more organized, we try to quote unquote optimize, be more efficient,
Mhm.
basically more of everything. But what's happening underneath is that we're still operating from this old identity, and while our life has fundamentally changed. And so even those small decisions start to feel disproportionately heavy because they're being made without this clear internal reference point. So instead of pushing harder, it's really about slowing down just enough to ask yourself, who am I now? And what,
Yeah.
again, going back to the theme, what actually matters in this season for me?
Yeah. It's
Mhm.
so interesting because we've been talking a lot about chapters recently and how we do just like fundamentally have different chapters. I think even when
Mhm.
we started this podcast, almost coming up on a year ago now, Sam and I started recording this. So the whole title and premise, We'll Sleep When We're Dead, was because our kids never sleep. We're always tired, all of that. But,
Yeah.
flash forward a year and I'm like, oh, our kids actually are sleeping better. Like, I am like,
Yeah.
there are pieces of it that just do evolve so quickly. And I'm curious, like, with that identity piece, like, how often do you feel like women need to continue to revisit this? Because it's like, I feel
Mm,
like there's a core identity shift when you just become a mom. There's a bit more of an identity shift when you become mom with 2 kids. I'm sure Sam has 3. Like, and then you
But
get to a
also,
point.
like,
Oh,
oh,
go
sorry,
ahead.
keep going. I was just say, like, that I think the toddler mom and the era that I'm entering is 2 very different moms as well. Because
mm,
my youngest is 3.5, and I can, like, see the light of, like, entering into a new stage. But the tired is still there, which we joke about, but
yeah.
my worries are so much more different than having 2 under or 3 under 4. So I think that is another shift. And I think that's kind of where I'm at personally, is that shift. But anyway, sorry to
Yeah.
interrupt you, Lucy. I just wanted to
Oh,
add
no,
that
you're
shift.
fine. I think I'm just curious about the identity piece, because I do feel like it can, obviously identity is a big thing and it doesn't shift quickly by any means, but it can evolve. And so, like, is there some sort of like, is this something you should be revisiting every 2 years? Is it you're revisiting it when you're feeling that kind of like gut pull of something isn't quite right? Or like, how do you think about that?
Yeah, it's the latter. And it's a great
Yeah.
question. It's the latter. It's really when you start feeling like something doesn't feel right and
Mhm.
you start to realize like, I don't know, I don't feel good about the direction that I'm going right now. I feel like something needs to shift. Something feels out of alignment. And again, it's that kind of language where you can't pinpoint it. You can't necessarily pinpoint how you feel, which also can be really like hard and frustrating,
Yeah.
right? But you
Yeah.
know that something is pulling you to think differently. And I think that is a
Mhm.
beautiful thing. I think it helps you evolve as a human, as a mom, an employee or an entrepreneur, a worker. The other thing that I want to mention is that I think that the whole concept of identity can be this like, whew, this sounds really complex. How do
Mhm.
I reinvent who I am?
Yeah.
That sounds
Totally.
really hard.
Yeah.
But I want to help simplify it for you. It's really actually a lot simpler than that. It's more so just what brings you joy right now? How do you want to live your life right now? That's who you are.
Yeah.
Who do you want to support in your life right now? Right. For me, a big part of like who I am right now is showing up for my people, my community. Like I'm in that season of motherhood where I have the ability now to come back to my friendships more, to be in touch with my friends from out of state more, to show up for people more, right? Like
Mhm.
that's a big part of my identity now. So it doesn't have to be this like massive overhaul of
Yeah.
coaching and ideating, right? Sounds daunting. And also, we don't have time for that.
No. We most certainly do not. No. Oh my gosh.
I know we're coming to an end, but I found all of this I found it interesting. And then I saw one of your LinkedIn posts and it comes to this identity piece, because I think that's like a little bit of like a crisis, maybe as a stay at home mom, like we said before we were kind of recording, of like, I didn't really think this was my identity. And I
Yeah.
blinked, and 7 years in, joke all the time, like, I still don't really want this to be my identity.
Yeah.
But then I talk to all these stay-at-home moms, and we do feel so burnt out. And to think about taking, like, we feel like we've already unloaded a lot. And then you had this post, and I just clipped a little bit of it. It was like, the desire for more isn't unrealistic. It's a signal. You want career that aligns with your life. Like, you were talking about how, like, it's okay to want more. But what's so scary about being in this position of wanting more is you're like, how in the world could I take on more? Because I'm already like starting to deload. Like, I've gotten rid of kids' activities. I've really tried to prioritize like when I get up in the morning now. And so then to imagine, like, yes, I have this fight in me that I want more, but then to add more sounds so daunting. And that's like, so it's so interesting. So do you have any quick, because I know we're coming to an end, advice on that, of like, if you have that feeling, it's a good thing, but then you really have to evaluate what's important, I imagine, because it feels like moms are already doing enough and too much. So
Yes.
anyway, do you have like a quick little advice on how you could manage that?
Yeah. Yeah. The thing that I would say quickly, without going into a full context of it, is not everything deserves your best energy. Even
Mm-hmm.
if even if everything needs some energy,
Mm.
not everything in your life deserves your best energy, right?
That's
Can I
really
get that
And
good.
neat
so,
pointed on a pillow,
Yeah,
Mel? I
that's
love
good, Mel.
that.
I understood.
yeah, it's
You
and
know what
again
does
that
not
goes
need
back to
sorry, you know what doesn't need my best energy? Is what I cook for dinner every night, because I can't
that's
stand it. But this podcast needs
exactly
my best
right.
energy. So I'm hearing you. Yes, I'm hearing you.
That is exactly right. So it's like letting fewer things get your highest effort and your
Mm-hmm.
emotional energy and also your self-judgment,
Yeah,
right? That's a big one for us because we feel like if we're going to do something, we're going to go all in. That's just
yeah,
how we
Mhm.
operate.
yeah,
Mhm.
But
yeah.
we have to actively for a week, I would like write down where am I putting all of my energy right now and make a list. What
Mm-hmm.
needs my best energy? Like have a line down the middle, best energy, mediocre energy, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love it.
That's
I'm
Yeah,
how I
scared
yeah,
to do that. I'm
yeah.
scared to do that exercise, and I want to do that exercise because I
Yeah,
think
yeah,
that would be a
yeah,
really fun thing to like challenge our listeners to do too
yeah.
for like a week and see. Yeah.
Yeah. no matter
you'll
what you're
start to
doing.
see what, because you're right, like you can't really let go of things, you know. We all have a lot on our plates, so like when we can't let go of things, what do?
And
We
also,
have to give ourselves grace to be okay with
Mhm.
50% sometimes with certain
And
things.
if you name something to not be your best energy and then you see it through and it still worked and it was fine, then you can have confidence that like your good energy is fine enough.
Is
But
good
that you
enough.
have to like
Exactly.
you have to see it through. You have to like trust.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Right.
that's really good. Okay, I'm having homework. Done.
I know. We love homework. Mel, we were both good
Yeah.
students, as you can imagine. So this is
Yeah,
I
this
can
is
amazing.
imagine.
amazing.
I
Yeah.
love it.
My gosh. Mel, thank you so much.
Yeah.
This was like wildly enlightening, and I'm not
Mm,
kidding. If you would join us
Yeah.
again, we will have you and dive into the other 10 million questions that we have, but
I would love
this was so
to. This was
great.
so fun. It was so fun being with both of you for almost a full hour, and I would be
Yeah.
happy to come on again.
Thank
Amazing.
you. And where can people find you? I
Yeah.
know we said a little
Most
bit about LinkedIn.
Yes, mostly on LinkedIn. I would
Cool.
say that is my social of choice. And then I have this new private podcast that you can listen to
Oh.
when yeah, so that is my main solution for everything that we're talking about right now. I also have a
Amazing.
membership platform, but it's moving more toward audio now because
Okay.
I need to fit it into working mothers' lives. So the
Yep.
podcast is
Mhm.
called Between Drop-Offs.
Awesome.
And
Oh.
it's not the type of thing where it's definitely more of coaching in your ear, kind of like a thought
Yeah.
partner in your ear, almost like what we've been talking about today.
Yeah.
So instead of starting at, episode 1 or working your way through, it's, more listening based on what you need when a decision is
Right.
looming or when guilt resurfaces or when
Mhm.
work starts to suddenly feel unbearable. Like that's what each episode is labeled as. Listen when guilt resurfaces, kind of like that.
Oh,
Yeah.
amazing. Well,
And
we'll
I'm
definitely
assuming
link that. Yeah.
yeah. And then you can
Awesome.
go back because in 6 months you're gonna have that feeling again. So you'll have
That's
to
right.
yeah, like you'll have to
That's the
yeah.
idea. Come back
Yeah.
over and over because
Yeah.
these themes resurface, especially as we
Yeah.
evolve.
Yeah,
Mhm.
they sure do. Amazing. Well, thank you so, so much. Have an amazing
You're
week.
so welcome.